Hey, welcome to Tell Me How You're Mighty, real talk about cheating. I'm Tracy Shorn, the blogger known as Chump Lady, where I implore people to leave cheaters and gain lives.
And I'm Sarah Gorrell, radio broadcaster by day, single mother of 4. And 13 years ago, my ex walked out on his family for his affair partner. And it didn't feel like it at the time, but my life is so much better without him.
And we're here to tell you that you are mighty. We survived infidelity, and you can too. And this is our podcast. Welcome. So this week, we are talking about the craziest cheater reactions you got when they were discovered cheating. Now, I have to preface this with saying most people have stone cold sociopaths. At least that was how it's surveyed over at chumplady.com, meaning that they just gaslit you and didn't break a sweat and had no adaptive anxiety whatsoever. And they just went on with the farce that they were faithful. But other people had cheaters that just completely lost their shit. And those are the stories that we are talking about today. So before I get into it, Sarah, did you have any crazy reaction when you busted your cheater?
Well, he denied it, which was quite entertaining. The photographic evidence was there, and actually the evidence in the form of text. So it's amazing how people, even in the face of really strong evidence, and also acting very offended that anyone would suggest such a thing. And the classic one of accusing me, counter thing, well, you're clearly having an affair. So all the usual, really. But the best reaction was when I eventually divorced him and how upset he was that he was served with divorce papers, given that marriage was for better or for worse. So I think, fairly standard behavior.
I'll tell my story and then we'll get into what prompted this, because there's a famous story at the blog about somebody whose cheater jumped around in a sleeping bag, and we'll get to that one in a minute. But I had the stone cold sociopath who just kind of gaslit me, or would just, they call it the trickle truth, would just tell me in so much as I absolutely had him dead to rights, but nothing else. And then I had to piece it the rest together. Oh, it was just awful. But I had a scary cheater who threatened to kill me, and I had a protection from abuse order. And when the cops came, they give you 10 minutes to clear your stuff out of the house, and then they take you away in a cop car. And as he was sitting in the back of a cop car, he was yelling at the top of his lungs at me, "How could you do this to me?"
There's never any accountability or taking it of being wrong themselves.
No, there's no self-awareness whatsoever. I mean, the guy had literally just terrified me. He'd come home, he'd ripped up the court order that I had. I had to call 911. I was hysterical with grief. I was terrified. And he had guns. I'm telling you my whole, domestic violence story. It was horrible. But the fact that was how he reacted. How could I do this to him? How could I? How could there be any kind of accountability whatsoever? I mean, what kind of monster am I, Sarah? So that one's not so funny, but the one that inspired this question was, and I'll read it. This is from years ago, but this was a woman on the blog called Barrister Bell. And she said, after D-Days 1 through 3, my now ex-husband was desperately pretending to reconcile. And then I saw that the other woman dingbat her text on his phone after we just had dinner with his grandmother. Here's what happened next. He threw the deck chairs into the pool, and then he jumped into the pool, fully clothed in his suit and shoes. And as I was calling the dingbat to have a chat with her, he ran into the house. After searching the rooms and yelling for him, I found him hiding upstairs, naked, and lying in a sleeping bag on the floor. He didn't feel like talking to me, so he stood up and, still wearing only a sleeping bag, bunny hopped his way out of the room and slid down the stairs on his butt like sledding down a hill. Now, that story is pretty hard to top, but
It is, and all I can think is it's such a shame it wasn't recorded, because that could have gone viral and that could have made a lot of money. But actually it's almost better told like that, trying to imagine these images in your head.
trying to maintain your dignity in a sleeping bag while bunny hopping. I'm not talking to you. Talk to the bag. I got to get out of here.
How do you get out of that situation as well, once you're at the bottom of the stairs in your sleeping bag? How do you redeem yourself and go back to being a normal functioning human being? It's pretty difficult, isn't it, really?
I don't know. The mind wobbles, right? Well, okay, we heard from some listeners who've left us their messages, and then we're going to read some.
We were married April 28th, 2018. When I found out she was cheating, I confronted her and said, between April 28th, 2018 to today, have you slept with any other man other than me? And her response was, today.
I feel sorry for this guy. Like, he gave a whole span of dates that's like, what, 5, 6 years long? And the answer is today. Like, her last episode was today.
I suppose at least it's honest.
Yeah, I give it points for that. But ow, I mean, so prolific.
And also sort of indicates that really just doesn't care in the slightest. But I think that's good. I think when you're confronted with evidence like that and it's just so obvious that this person is beyond redemption, it almost makes moving forward easier.
Yeah, that might be the craziest reaction, is that she was truthful, whereas, usually they're up to all sorts of shenanigans to not be truthful. She just told him, but oof, that's a hard blow to take.
It is gone from one extreme to the other, though, from a sort of cold and callous today to Victoria's story, which I again wish I could have photographic evidence of this. Let's listen.
I left him on D-Day when I discovered his secret double life, involving prostitutes. During that first week, he stood every morning at an intersection on the busy 4-lane road that I took to work, looking pitiful and carrying a huge sign that read, "Victoria, come home." Later, friends and family who saw him do this questioned him, and he denied it. A few months later, when I accompanied my attorney to the cheater's industrial workshop while he took a business asset valuation tour, there was the sign in the corner of the shop.
You do see this kind of stuff online, and I always wonder if it's staged or not, but I believe Victoria, that this guy stood on a highway with a sign saying, "Come home." Do you think that was like a plot from a romantic film? Can you imagine thinking that would work?
Well, it's just the idea, isn't it? That you think that somebody would be just driving to work and then think, oh, he's put it on a sign on my work route. Of course, I'll forgive all the unforgivable behaviour and trot home because he's made a sign. Lovely.
Well, the other thing about the sign is it's so sad sausage and it's so pitiful. But you notice that the sign doesn't say, like, "I'm sorry I cheated on you," in which case maybe someone might run him over or something. No, he looks sad and mournful, like a homeless man, like sitting there with his sign, to give him 10 cents for coffee or something. He's going, "Victoria, come home." He's the abandoned one. He's the sad, sad kitten asking for her to come back. And completely leaving off on his cardboard sign that he did something to drive this woman away from him.
What he should have added in brackets at the bottom of the sign, I may or may not be there, depending on whether I'm with prostitutes at the time. That would be a more honest sign experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, there wouldn't be any honest side experience. Okay, well, we have other crazy reactions. So this one from Katie.
Mine is a sociopath, but he had his moments still. For the first week or so, I kept making dinner out of habit. I would sit at the table and not eat, and I was like a zombie. Our 19-year-old son still lived with us though, and he didn't know yet, so I still made dinner. After about a week, my ex came home one night and was like, "Boy, it sure is nice to still come home to a homemade dinner," and he grinned at me like he just said the funniest thing in the world. I stopped cooking and grocery shopping after that. I wasn't eating anyway, and my son knows how to get food. Maybe a week later, my ex had a meltdown in the kitchen in front of our son and said, "She still has access to my money, so she should still be buying me groceries." Our son knew at that point and told him, "You're divorcing her. It's not her job to buy you groceries anymore. You need to buy your own groceries." He had a little tantrum in the kitchen over it.
I mean, hey, you still need to cook the dinner, chump. He was expecting his dinner. What's going on?
It's sort of a weird grinning at the end as well, as if he was some kind of comedy entertainment in amongst his unreasonable demands.
Yeah, that's just crazy. Although I have to say, it's a fairly common story over at Chump Lady that people expect you to keep going on being the spousal appliance. Like, of course you're gonna clean up and provide childcare and cook dinners and do all the adulting, right? Because that's your job, to do the adulting. And when you stop doing the adulting for them, how dare you?
Well, actually, people are really showing that they are in the child role because, again, I'd quite like to see some of these. I would like to witness the little tantrum in the kitchen over it. Some people revert to being 2 years old when they've been badly behaved. They then revert to unreasonable toddlers, to the person that is just simply picking them up on their bad behavior.
Yeah, right. To the toddler point, hiding in a sleeping bag. That is kind of regressing, isn't it? I mean, that's going way back. But yeah, you're not mommy anymore. Sorry. So we move on to our next one. This one was anonymous, but I believe this story because I read a lot of these kind of stories.
My fuckwit faked a heart attack. I had just finished a conversation where I said that I was opting completely out of any triangle. No sooner had I headed upstairs than he wanly called out, asking for me to come back downstairs. He said that his heart felt funny and that I needed to call the nurse emergency helpline. I dutifully did. He sat on the floor with a pretend pained expression on his face and gave baby-voiced answers as I spoke to the helpline and relayed his symptoms to the online nurse. Every fibre in my being knew that he was faking. Afterward, I took him to a nearby emergency room. He clung to me as we walked in. We waited for a long time in the waiting room, then he was called in. The hospital nurses wanted to run some tests, of course. And what do you think happened? The man who had limped his way slowly into their consulting room sprung out of there as though a firecracker had been attached to his nethers. He couldn't get out of there fast enough. He declared he wouldn't be doing any medical tests and that we, were leaving. Straight away, no time to spare. After he'd shot through the exit doors, the emergency nurse called me over and voiced her concern about how strangely he'd behaved. Of course he had. I walked back out to the car with him. He was walking with a quick, peppy step, miraculously fully recovered from whatever had ailed him earlier.
You really have to be a special kind of fuckwit to fake a heart attack.
Are you telling me that you read a lot of stories like these then?
Yeah, it's usually not a heart attack. It's usually that they threaten suicide. And I'm sorry to say that that's really common. And my advice to anybody who's dealing with this, if you have a cheater that reacts to trying to create a bigger drama than the one that was just uncovered with I'm going to kill myself, is take it really seriously because you don't know. Maybe they're being dramatic. I tend to think they probably are. And we'll get to Anonymous's story in a moment. But if they're not, call the psych emergency line and they will get a 72-hour involuntary commitment, at least in the US. I don't know how it is in the UK. And if they were manipulating, that will shut that shit down very quickly because it's not fun to be in an involuntary psych commitment. But, you're not taking any chances, right? I don't know. The fake heart attack is pretty next level. And I love how he thinks that like everyone's just going to be cool with it. Like, okay, I faked a heart attack and now I'm all better. It's time to go home.
It just amused me though that he limps his way in and then he shoots out of there. So a firecracker had been attached to his set of neppers.
With a quick and peppy step.
An interesting image that again comes into my head is quite enjoyable, but obviously, for the emergency professionals involved, they've got real patients to deal with, not sad, pathetic attention seekers.
Absolutely. Well, somebody who was actually an emergency care nurse got on that thread and was saying, oh no, we see this in emergency rooms quite often. And it's over this. It's over like relationship breakdown or something. And someone threatens something really over the top. It's like next level manipulation to fake a medical emergency, an illness, a psychiatric crisis. It's so deceptive, and that's why it's hard for chumps because you care, right? You're still bonded to this person. And so if they say they're in distress, you will put your distress aside to center them and take care of them, which just makes a whole other layer of awfulness to it all. Well, let's do Kelly.
He collapsed on the ground and screamed in front of the kids, then ran into the woods to call the other woman. That evening, when he was home and me and the kids were at a hotel, he invited his friends over, got sloppy drunk, peed himself, and went door to door telling the neighbours he screwed up and would be moving. He shook my one neighbour's hand, and they realised his hand was wet from scratching his pee-covered crotch. Ooh. Then he moved in with Mummy and would go from texting me apologies, blame shifting, and didn't want to see the kids until he talked to a lawyer. Fun times.
Well, there's a lot of undignified behaviour going on here, isn't there, really? This is a whole new level of undignified that we've heard here.
He peed himself and then went to shake hands. So much yuck.
We wouldn't look at this person and go, oh, I'm so sad that I've lost this man in my life. It actually makes you feel quite glad that somebody else has got this as a responsibility. I hope the other woman just picked him up and took him and kept him. That would be the best outcome for this.
Still damp from his crisis, from his little alcoholic meltdown there. The other part of it was, why would you run into the woods if you're gonna make a call? Seriously? Like, are you a werewolf? I mean, like, why are you going in the woods to make it no one can find you? It is so bizarre. Well, our next one is the ER nurse that I had mentioned. Here's what happens if you go that route.
We have had people come into our ER because they got caught cheating or doing some other wildly disrespectful thing to their partner, and they think threatening suicide will get them out of accountability. They are not happy at all when they find out what actually happens when they do that. What do you mean I have to take off my clothes and put on this gown? Why can't I have my phone? Where's my stuff? Why can't I leave? What do you mean by psych hold? Yeah, us, but when you say you're going to off yourself if your wife tells anyone you cheated, if you take all your drugs to stop your wife from calling the other woman, or you say you're going to cut yourself if she gets divorce papers, you don't get to just chill out for a couple of hours and leave when you're over it. I've seen so many cheaters pull the fake suicide intention statement to avoid having to deal with getting caught and then regret that decision when it dawns on them they don't get to make decisions anymore.
Why can't I leave? Yes. Why can't you go?
A good way of dealing with them as well is to get the surgical gloves out. I mean, little visions of the surgical gloves going on slowly.
I know. Can you just imagine them in their little paper towel gown? Sitting there in that cold, cold room. I don't know what they were thinking.
I get really sad that there's so many of them that make their way into A&E. I mean, these really are. They're wasting but everybody's time with their antics, aren't they?
Yeah. And they're wasting your time too as a child. I mean, my God.
So it shows you they don't really think things through, because where do they think this is going to get them? How do they think this scenario is going to play out in the long run?
I think it's worked for them. I think as a strategy, it works for them. I think this is when it's as extreme as like the double life has been found out, then they really have to raise the stakes. I think that's a real Hail Mary play. But I know mine, like when I would get on his trail to find out shady stuff, I didn't fully know yet, but I would question his story or something. He would often divert me with a crisis or chaos making or something that would take my attention off him and divert it to whatever crisis he created. And to me, this is just an extension of that strategy.
Well, mine did exactly the same. He was actually signed off work for quite a long time because he claimed to be depressed and suicidal. And then when he went back to work, 'cause he was in the police force, they told him that because of his mental health issues, he wasn't allowed to use a taser. And he was absolutely furious. He was quite happy to have months off work with mental health issues, but not actually to be told that he wasn't allowed anywhere near any weapons because of his precarious mental state.
How could you? How could you do this to him? I think that's kind of the theme of all this entitlement craziness. Well, too bad he didn't get an involuntary psych hold, Well, on that super exciting note, we're going to end this one for this week. But next week, we're going to talk about AI boyfriends and Chat GPT girlfriends and how the brave new world of cheating. So tune in and have a great week. Reach out to us. You can check us out at tellmehowyourmighty.com or check out the blog at chumplady.com. I'm always open to your suggestions there.